Social distancing is a tried and tested method in slowing down the pace of epidemic spread, and certainly in the cases of previous influenza pandemics, social distancing has been used to some effect in slowing down the spread. Social distancing is based on a principle that you don't know who's infected, and you're putting social distance between everyone. We've said again and again, many countries are not in that situation yet. Many countries are in a situation where the disease is recognisable, cases can be detected, contacts can be identified, quarantined, and it is a more cost-effective intervention to separate some individuals from society than separate everybody in society from each other. However, where there is not a good handle, where there hasn't been a good understanding of disease transmission, where enough has not been invested in core public health interventions such as case finding and contact tracing, then social distancing measures may be your only option to create distance between individuals. But as we've said in previous press conferences, they are very costly interventions in terms of societal acceptance. They're very costly in economic terms. And they have to be used in a time-limited fashion with the specific purpose of slowing down infection enough to protect the health system. And I think this is the difference. Very often in public health, we use case finding and contact tracing to go after the virus, to stop, to interrupt, to push back. That's the purpose of those public measures. The purpose of social distancing is only to slightly slow down the virus so your health system can cope. The objectives are different. And I think we have to be clear that social distancing measures are not a panacea. Social distancing measures are not going to stop this epidemic. They're not going to stop this pandemic purely in their own right. And if countries want to really turn this around, for those countries that are in a position to do that, and it's been clearly demonstrated in other places, then investing back in a measured, comprehensive strategy, as Dr. Tedros has referred to it so many times, of trying to still do the kind of case finding, contact tracing, isolation to push the virus back. That is not to say that certain social distancing measures will not have a positive impact, but they come at a cost and must be considered, as Dr. Tedros has said, in the local context. And there's a local context that is both in public health terms, but also in societal acceptance terms. A society may accept social distancing in one part of the world, and they may reject it in another. And governments have to balance those genuine dilemmas around social and community acceptance.
If I can just compliment that.
Once again, this is Soundoff with 10-10-220, and of course, yours truly, Africa Allah. And today,
hello.
Really? Today we're talking about COVID-19. That's the coronavirus 19. That is a new strand of coronavirus.
I just think 2019 wasn't ready to be over.
So it wasn't ready to be over.
Yeah, so they was like, let me COVID into COVID-19 into 2020.
A covert operation that infiltrates itself into the year 2020. Well, the virus is a respiratory disease. Well, it affects the respiratory, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have existing or pre-existing conditions, heart like conditions, respiratory conditions, diabetes, etc., you're more susceptible to
going through chemo.
Yeah. Additionally, the one thing that you should do is protect and build your immune system. Toddlers ages 4 and under, and elderly ages 60 and over are more susceptible to the disease and likely to die from it as a result. The disease basically deals with basic hygiene. It's the common flu, a little more aggressive than the common flu, but for the most part, it's influenza. The same traits of influenza are the same traits that you would see in the coronavirus. There are several reference points that are available to help you. Hopefully, we'll be able to put the links for those things in here so that you'll be able to check that out. The World Health Organization is constantly putting out new information daily in regards to numbers and so forth. That's our technical spiel on it. Let's talk about how it's affecting the country, social media response, and the economy of the world. So, Ten, I want you to talk about, give us your insight on how things are happening over in New York City.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. How are things happening? How are things going over in New York City?
Ironically, I don't see any change other than social gatherings. Actually, no. Let me correct that. So the city and state closed all major gathering places, right? So we're here in the States. So all the arenas, so like all the sporting events, all of the museums and the libraries, anywhere that there's a gathering of, I think, 500 or more, which I don't know what library hosts 500 or more people, but hey, if there's a library here in New York City that hosts that, then more power to you. But so they're canceling all of those things, but what they're not canceling, which I know hosts 500 or more people, are the schools. So the schools are still open, and I'm not talking about like universities, because universities already started closing they're closing, not holding classes, promoting more online courses and classes with their students and faculty and things like that. I'm talking about like the public schools and where our K through 12 graders are attending. So those are still in full effect. So everything else is shutting down except for our schools.
Well, I'm currently in the Bahamas, and as you know, carnival season, it's carnival season, right? Trinidad just had their carnival without any incident. It wasn't until after Trinidad Carnival that one person flying in from Switzerland came in, which is 2 weeks after Trinidad Carnival. They came in and they had the virus. The same thing with Jamaica. A foreigner came into Jamaica with the virus.
From where? We gotta say what region?
Both of them came from Europe. Both people came from Europe. As a result, Jamaica Carnival, which was supposed to be April 15th through April 14th through 16th, has now been canceled, and all surrounding events relating to Jamaica Carnival have followed suit.
Wow. So they canceled events in April, even though we're trying to figure this out here in March.
Yes. So they canceled that, and they push Jamaica Carnival to October 25th, 2020. So that's 2 weeks shortly after Bahamas Carnival. 2 weeks shortly after Miami Carnival, and 1 week prior to Uber Soca Cruise. Yeah, big thing.
Big team.
So Bahamas Carnival is set for the week of April 30th through May 4th. There are rumors spewing around that Bahamas Carnival will be postponed and or canceled. We're still waiting for the official word. However, let's look a little deeper into that. There hasn't been one case of coronavirus. I think there was a report that there was one case in, and they were still looking for confirmation that person had it. I haven't heard back yet on that. However, even that case is someone traveling from Europe. A tourist traveling from Europe. Yes, there's a trend here.
Trending.
Well, we'll talk about that. No, we'll talk about that later, because I really want to talk about the financial effects that this is having on the world economy, and an island like the Bahamas, which is dependent. Our number one form of income comes from tourism.
Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh. Tourism and banking, ironically, and those are the two things that are being affected as a result of the pandemic that's occurring.
And then I just want to say that it's not ironic that it's tourism and banking, because those are the two things that are utilized by nice foreign visitors.
Okay.
No, it's true. Like, where are they going to put their money if they want to hide it? You're hiding people money.
All right, whatever. Anyway, moving right along. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about covert.
Yes, covert. Yes, covert financial practices in the Bahamas.
So, September 1st, 2019, Bahamas suffered a catastrophic hurricane, a Category 5 hurricane, one of the most dangerous hurricanes in years. And the hurricane left the Bahamas in debt to the tune of almost $8 billion.
Wow.
Not even, I mean, we're not even 6 months into it yet. The recovery process, whereas there are still families, thousands of families were left without homes. We still haven't recovered from that. There are communities without resources and children without parents. Now,
right, yeah, there's still people.
Now we're looking at an event that would have brought in a sizable amount of income into the system and help boost the economy so that we can continue to provide relief and aid for people that survived Hurricane Dorian in September, right? This year would have been year 6 of Bahamas Carnival, and we've gotten a lot of traction in regards to international exposure, and people are familiar with the product now as a result. And because of the proximity, again, which was always the selling point, the proximity to the U.S. and the cost effectiveness of the products, people were excited, to come out to the Bahamas.
I just want to say that there's some of us that still are like, we're really baking and hoping like we get it together by the end of March, because that's where a lot of the things are being shut off. Like, they're shutting them off until the end of March, April 6th, which is the first Monday in April. So it being that the Bahamas Carnival is in May, the first weekend in May, we still have a hold and a strength on we're making it to Carnival in the Bahamas.
Well, in the interim, there are, we're still partying in the Bahamas. I got
that's
3
what I
events
told people.
tonight.
I said, there's still going to be a party. There's still going to be a celebration.
Yeah. But when we look at it from the world perspective, when we look at, the Dow for the last 5 days has opened at a deficit or fallen significantly. This is a perfect opportunity for anybody to buy stocks who, whether they know about stocks or don't know about stocks, this is a perfect opportunity to buy because they're selling low.
Yep. Get your
buy low, sell high. So purchase the stocks now. But in the interim, right, the stock market is crashing. The stock market is, I've never seen numbers like this in years. Another part of it is that this is not this. I think the reaction to this is more of a panic reaction than a strategical reaction. And I say this because social media is more prevalent in media and media communication and communication. And during this particular presidency or this particular time in our culture. In 2009, there were 2 states, national states of emergency, as a result of an epidemic, right? As a result of a health epidemic, which was the West Nile virus and the bird flu. But people were not in a panic the way they are in a panic now. And as a result of that, before we ask for open communication and transparency, but in reality, the truth is we can't handle the bomba clot truth, for real.
Yeah.
We really can't handle
right, and that's how we were programmed anyway. We were programmed to have things fed to us, first chewed up and then fed to us already super processed. So when you have the raw truth and understanding, it's just like, oh, no, I can't take this. I can't. I don't know what's going on here. I have a sense of fear. And then most people don't want to go and get their own information. Like they rather hear it from third or fourth, fifth string, especially media that dramatize everything.
Well, and our leadership isn't any better. I mean, the way that the president handled it, I truly blame. I can't put blame anywhere, but I feel that the way that the administration is dealing with the situation,
the Bahamian administration,
no, the U.S. administration, because, and I say this because the rest of the world is, or the rest of the world is taking suit, is following the lead of the larger countries, right? The smaller countries are following the lead of the larger countries. This is the first time that I've ever seen where countries outside of the U.S. have been like, you know what, this is what we're going to do. I don't care what y'all doing over there.
Right. Yeah. Like they're not waiting on, they're not taking our lead.
Yeah. There's no unison in the reaction or the practices that they're putting out in regards to dealing with this particular thing. I think that most countries are taking their cues from the World Health Organization,
which they should,
and the CDC based on their suggestions. Your presidential leader for the United States, the fact that in the middle of a pandemic, you decide to take a working vacation for 17 days. What does that say to the rest of the world?
First of all, I believe he's calling it a working vacation because he knows that he needs to be quarantined because he's possibly been exposed. So he's never going to admit to it. He didn't want to get tested in the first place. We still don't know if he got tested because there has been record of someone he met with, shook hands with, pretty much tested positive for the coronavirus, and he refused to get tested. He refused to even put it out there that he may be exposed. But we can't begin to figure out what he thinks about or what goes on in his mind, even with his Twitter rants. It's still just like, you just don't know what Trump is going to do or not do. But what I can say is this, that I don't think it's a bad thing that he's going on a working vacation, because he needs to put people that knows what they're doing, or people that know what they're doing needs to take the leadership role, because he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. And it's prevalent every day that he talks, every day that he makes any action or inaction to this pandemic. So maybe he needs to step away and have people that know what they're doing get it together.
Agreed. but that also shows the competency level of leadership.
Well, I say
You
this
know?
over and over again. I wasn't surprised when he became president. He did get votes. People did vote for him. I'm not saying that our system is perfect, because our election system is not, in the U.S. is not nowhere near perfect. There's a lot of things that go on in that, but he still was able to get people to support him and to vote for him, and he made it into office. So I don't always point at him, even though he's the one who's the leader of the quote unquote free country. But we have to take some responsibility in this, and we also have to take some responsibility in how we react to this pandemic, how we react to COVID-19. So, yeah, because it's one. If it's not one thing, it's going to be another. This is not our first virus concern for the world and for the U.S.
But this is our first virus concern where the information is magnified because of the transmission and retransmission and retransmission of the information through multiple sources is being funneled through multiple sources, and people are reconfiguring the truths or leaving out portions of the information, or just making assumptions and putting out their assumptions and their opinions versus putting out the information and then putting out their opinions. See, responsible journalism is not just giving. Responsible journalism, number one, is not opinions. Responsible journalism is showing the facts on both sides of the spectrum, and then if you so choose to give your personal opinion, your personal professional opinion based on the facts presented, or give your hypothesis based on the facts presented. But you cannot put out information, your hypothesis, without putting out the negative and the positive information that's listed. And as I've been analyzing the information that's come out from news entities and from social media perspective, people are conveniently leaving out either the negative and or the positive. They're not putting out the information as it was released by the scholarly journal and or the organizations responsible for releasing and disseminating information related to the coronavirus 19.
A part of that too is you're right on that. A part of that too is the understanding that knowledge is power. So if you provided the proper knowledge and information, it would empower people. It would provide a safe place for people to make the proper and right decisions, right? So depending on which side of this you're on, if you're on the side of I'm going to need to make money off of this, or I'm going to need to be concerned about the welfare of actual people, the money part is always going to win, unfortunately. And I believe that's what's also driving this, because we although we have areas that are hurting in the economy, there are certain areas that's booming. The medical, pharmaceutical places, they're booming. Certain they have a control of a certain trade or what's coming in and what's coming out, and this is also an opportunity to figure out how you can, like, certain percentage of people can capitalize off of this. So it's unfortunate, and it's an election year. So for us in the U.S., a big election year, which I feel like every election is a big election, but of course the presidential election is this year, right? Which is a huge thing that's going on here. So it's a number of factors that's leading into the level of corrupt information that is being fed to the public. Only thing, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things to look at it that way, and it's very unfortunate because What needs to happen is that it needs to move into a space where we're supporting each other. Like, we're still patronizing our local businesses, our mom and pop stores, our festivals. Well, it depends on what level, because it's really hard. We're right now have people that work hourly or don't have place salaries or jobs where you could take time off or you can take sick leave. Like, we have in a position where most of our employees in the US have to work in order to have money. Like, they have to be at work in order to have money. So you have it where the NBA, they canceled what seems to be almost the rest of the season. And they have the players pledging money to help pay the employees of the arenas. I'm like,
yeah, but the rest of the world don't have that. We don't have that. I don't have the luxury.
Okay, you're right. The reason why I said that is because how did it become on the responsibility of the players? They're employees too, you know. So that's the reason why I brought it up. It's like there's no plan to say what to do or what not to do, and that's also the reason why they're not closing. Part of the reason why they're not closing the schools in New York State and New York City. I'm going to say New York City because I believe some schools are closing in the States, because the parents and the children cannot afford not to be in school. We have children. New York City has the largest population of homeless children, that the only place they know where to be safe is in school. That's the only way where they can get a meal. And that's also including the programs that support these schools, like after school programs and other programs that take place in support of the children. So when we talk about these things and they're talking about, pandemic, it's going to spread, no one is talking about how we need to help the people, the humans first.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I understand it from the humanitarian standpoint. As the real thing is that there is no plan of action. There are no procedures. And it's interesting how this pandemic is going to change the way we think about education, the way we think about businesses. And I think it's going to be it's going to jumpstart a push towards more technology and more digital communication as a result. But from a human perspective, when we start talking about the underserved communities, because that's what we're talking about, the underserved communities, will they then be obsolete and fall off? Will they be the forgotten?
First of all, they're going to really see and realize how, and I say this all the time, how they need us. Like, they're not cooking their own meals. They're not washing their own clothes. They're not even caring for their own children. So those that are the percentage of people that feel like that is not affecting them, because when they make these decisions, they make these decisions on what is their best interest. They don't make the decisions on what is the interest of the whole, what is the interest of the people.
Well, colleges have been closed. Colleges have been closed. There are, in the South. Well, I know. Hold on. In Atlanta, the schools have been closed. The schools are closed. They've been closed. They will be closed for 2 weeks or indefinitely until there is a solution. They said 2 weeks, 14 days until there's a solution. Right. So it's and or, right? That's further in the South. I know that for Atlanta so far. And I know that there are college dorms that have just been like, okay, so y'all got to get out today. So
my second part to that is that do they still have to pay for tuition? Do they still have to pay for room and so this is what I'm talking about. Like the school closing them down for 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks or what have you. But they're not saying, but we're not going to charge you for room and board we're not going to charge you for classes. They're closing schools. That's good and all, but I'm pretty sure the parents that those schools that they're closing, and I'm not saying that this doesn't need to happen. I do believe that this is a part of it in order to get a hold of this pandemic so it can minimize the spread. But when I'm talking about preparation or prepare or precautionary measures, those same students that can't go to school, those same children that can't go to school in Georgia, where are their parents putting them? Because the parents still
and that is the
work.
problem, because most of the people, that's why I said that this is going to be a push towards a lot of things. Like, luckily I work in technology, but the bad part about me working in technology is I work in technology for people that work in the real world. So even though my work isn't affected and the stuff that I do isn't affected, it is because my clients are mainly people that are promoters or travel or whatever the case may be, and their work and their job rely on human communication and human interaction. So while my job is behind the computers and I'm putting out all of the work that promotes and brings these people together, I'm currently out of a job because nobody going to a gathering. So this is trickle down effect of everything. There are companies that are losing billions of dollars. Live Nation lost billions of dollars in the last 2 weeks as a result of thousands of concerts being canceled because of the pandemic. Think about the fast food workers. They're going to be out of a job. Think about the people that make minimum wage. All of the minimum wage workers, they work in communities and institutions where their job relies on interacting and engaging with the public. And if the public ain't going out, they have no reason to be in there. And they only get paid for the hours that they work. And these are the same people whose children are now at home and there's nothing to feed them.
Africa, this was happening way before the COVID-19. So the things what I'm saying, this amplifies, this amplifies it to the point where it is now being a World Health issue. But it was always this type of thing. It's labeled as COVID-19, but this type of thing has been in the works since the integration of technology into everyday life, and then how we did not prepare as a people to say, because what you mentioned was already happening prior to this. What I'm talking about happening is that there were people losing their job, and this also contributed to part of the reason why Trump became president. He fared well. He fared well in areas where they was losing their jobs and their livelihood based off of what was coming in, what was technology coming in. They didn't know it. That's exactly what it was, but they knew that they wasn't having those factory jobs anymore. They knew that they weren't. Everything is you're ordering everything online, so you don't need to be in a store to buy the things that you need. Stores were closing. These are real things. So now you have a something that's visually in your face, because when it's about your understanding health, and a few people die, because if we want to talk about facts and figures, more people die from everyday habits like health habits than they do this corona situation. Okay, so when you have this already down the pipeline, is only now a matter of fact is how is it affecting the money, the bottom line for the 1%? Because you didn't mind that there were children that weren't getting that was getting kicked out of school because they couldn't pay their lunch bill. That's one thing. You didn't mind that the federal minimum wage in the US is $7.25. Who's living off?
Well, that's great that the federal minimum wage in the US is $7.25. That's more than the average Bahamian makes. The average Bahamian makes $225
right. So what you're saying is
week.
basically the same thing. Whatever you guys make over there, you cannot survive on. Whatever is the minimum wage here, you cannot survive on. If it wasn't for the individual state saying, like, my city or my state needs to be making this amount because of the cost of living in this city or state, all of us would be at $77.25 an hour, right? So,
right.
I'm saying that to say this is that it's not a pandemic until certain people's bottom line is being affected, because we was already on a quote unquote pandemic from
we were already on an economical pandemic for years. We've been on an economical pandemic for years, but it's going to be amplified because the top 1% are being affected by it. And when the top 1% are affected by it, it becomes a trickle down effect where we then suffer. We are going to suffer. You know, you may have food in your house today. You may have ration your stuff. This is the perfect opportunity for you to be on that, what do you call it? Intermittent fasting.
Yes.
You need to do that. Because whatever you have, I'm telling you, stores and business, they're closing borders, you know, stuff like that. Like, we just recently the cruise ships said that they are going to suspend all cruises, right? So when these 5 ships leave the port today from the Bahamas,
there's not going to be any. Yeah,
we don't have any more tourists.
Right.
We don't have any more tourists coming in from the port. So that is a whole sector. That's a whole sector of business that won't be active for 30 days. Now, 30 days. Now we're supposedly 47 days away from Bahamas Carnival. 30 days.
Well, you already know
days.
People wait to the last minute to book, so they got 17 days from the 30 days. I know.
It doesn't matter. The state of the country thereafter, and the mindset. I mean, from the worry and the uncertainty of it all, I've been in a total disarray, and I've been very diplomatic in my communication with my clients, in my communication with the general population, in my communication with my social media accounts, because people, while I don't know it, right? While I don't feel it, I do know that my voice and my information, I am an influencer in this particular market. You know what I mean? So I have to be very mindful and responsible about the information and the way I say things, because if I sound like I'm in a panic, then my listeners, my viewers, and my followers are going to feel like they're going to get in a panic. But I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to be real with you. Like, I have not been able to sleep. I've had dreams for the last 7 days about this. Once I saw the stock market opening 3 days in a row at the lowest rates that they've ever opened up, and some at minus, I was like, oh my God, because I know, again, like I said, we cannot survive the fallout from this. We cannot survive the economic fallout from this pandemic. Not after we just suffered a catastrophic hurricane that has left us in debt to the tune of $8 billion.
I understand.
And to turn around and not be able to support our community, because while the borders may be closed for 30 days, the fallout from this is that people will not travel after. People will not travel after. it's going to be at least 30 to it's going to be at least 3 to 4 months before people even get on a plane. We were already with like I had a really BS job at one of the hotels, right? And even in that, seeing the way that they operate and they treat their employees made me understand and feel more compassion for people that work these jobs, these hospitality jobs. You know, people were begging for one day, bringing home $60 a day. And that's $60. That's $60 a day before taxes. So in actuality, you know, they were bringing home probably about $54, if that, a day.
And that's if they have,
you know what I mean?
That's not including how many days they may have that week, because they stagger. Like in hospitality, they stagger. They might just have you come in one day that week.
Exactly. And then you know, at the end of the day, I remember I got a check and I was like, I might as well, because we have to think about all the other things that go into that day, right? Your transportation. If you got a car, you got to put gas in it. So it's $50, but you just had to put $20 worth of gas in your car. So you only made $30 that day.
Right.
All right. It's $50, but you had to put gas in your car. So say you put $15 gas in your car, but you got to get food. You have to eat and your kids have to eat. That's if you got children, right? So you have to give each one of them at least $10 because they have to eat, they have to get home, they have to go to school, and they have to get home from school.
Wow.
You know, so when you think of it from that perspective, like, and this is on a regular, and you start talking about now, you're talking about you probably get in one day per week. And if the hotel is at is at low occupancy, they call you when they have people in. So what are you supposed to do when there's nobody in there? How can you save when you only making enough to pay the bill?
Africa, one thing I can say is this, that based off of history, I still believe we are the strongest people. Second, I know that this is going to be a rough thing to come to survive. And a part of it is because we're just not ready for this. Like, we didn't prepare for this. It's not like we were set up to a point where we know how to self-sustain.
Oh. But the government isn't prepared for it. The government hasn't prepared for it. So we can't blame corporations or we can't blame communities for not being prepared for it, because nobody expected it. And like I said, again, the amplification of the message through social media makes it worse, because people's reaction, again, like I said, the reason that I feel like I have to be very, very selective in the way I say things and the tone, even the words that I use, I make sure that I use specific words, because I understand what words mean. You know what I mean? And the tone that it sets. So when you're following 300 people and their information is coming through their feed, you start to take on their fears, whether real or not.
That's how social media works.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
I mean, you know, it's my business. And I talked about it yesterday to somebody, and I was saying, you know, we talked about these things back in the 80s and the 90s when we talked about New World Order and One World Order and all of these things. But we give up so many of our rights in the name of advancement in technology. You know, if we even look at the way the music is, right? In the 90s and the 80s, we had we had artists talking about these things. In the 2000s, all of a sudden it was lean and glorification of using drugs. Now in the 90s and the 80s, we were selling it. We had one or two people that were snorting white lines, but in the 90s and 80s, we were selling it. Now, in 2000s, we talking about taking designer drugs and being fucked up and blah, blah, blah. And guess what? We were not prepared mentally from a community standpoint to even comprehend all of the things that we gave up.
Because part of it too is just being I don't want to say comfortable, but it was just like, oh, okay, as long as I'm living, as long as I'm surviving, as long as I'm making it to the next day. So we don't put into action things to say, okay, we need better for ourselves, because we're reliant on the government. We're relying on the people that we put in office. We're reliant on them making the proper decisions because that's what we voted them to do, or we felt like we voted them to do. And then we're not realizing it until it's too late. Like, well, that decision doesn't do well for us as a people. But we voted that person in. We were a part of the system that created this situation, this problem. So what to do? Because if we sat there, because this is great, like us being in technology, you being so knowledgeable and knowing what technology and knowing what marketing and media and especially the social media aspects of what this is like, this is just a matter of time. Like for me, I'm not surprised. I'm not taken back. I'm not saying like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. Because this is me. I'm actually pretty calm in the situation of what's going on, more than those that are around me. So this is just an era that needs to happen, and it needs to play out because this is what we created.
Yeah, it is what we created. But what is the resolve? How do you, and this is my question to everyone, not just to you, but how do we, in a time of heightened panic and alarm, how do we deal with the economic and mental fallout from this particular pandemic? And how do we survive in the next 6 months to sustain a country and or community that is reliant on human interaction?
So a couple of things. Okay, so that great question. A part of it too is that we cannot be comfortable in this. Like we cannot let this, because we're going to get past this. I already know that we're going to get past it. It may not be the struggle that we want, or we don't, or the trial that we want to go through, but we're gonna go through it and we're gonna get past it. Is what happens after that you're asking, and a part of it, what happens after, is what do you do during? How do you prepare? How do you? One of the biggest things that they talk about is hygiene. How do you washing your hands, and this is a minute thing, because for us to understand that washing your hands is important. Like, you know that you understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm saying that they say the best way to do this is to make sure that you wash your.
Yeah, no, but we're talking about right now.
I'm talking about basic stuff. So I know, like for example, I know as a kid, I was taught that I have to wash my hands with soap and water, right? Right. So this washing my hands is not a new thing to me. It's not. It's not like, oh my goodness, I got to figure out how to do this. Yeah. Like, like everyone else. We're talking about things that we allowed to happen and to spread because we weren't we weren't taught, or we weren't prepared for it. So my thing is this, is like, maybe it needs to burst where you have to be more reliant on your people, on your community. Maybe it needs to go back to, you don't need to shop and get all these foreign goods all the time. Maybe it needs to go back to you supporting your mom and pops, or go back to, I mean, I know people that are awesome seamstress and knows how to sew and produce certain goods by hand. Maybe it needs to get back to that. Maybe it needs to be a moment of blackout where people need to know how it feels to actually not have a phone, and actually talk and create with each other. Maybe it needs to be a point where we're back at a bartering system. And I'm not saying it needs to be this dramatic. What I'm saying is that if you have a mindset of, okay, I understand that I can survive, you know, like some people can't survive a day without their mobile device. Like the whole world comes to an end. And this is and we now say, okay, you actually need a day to not be connected to your mobile device because it's for your.
Yeah, that's right. Great. That's great for mental health. They tell you that, you know, you have to take a certain amount of hours.
We have to get to that point. We have to get to the point where some experts said that. Because we were creating an unhealthy. We were becoming holistically unhealthy. Right.
Well, we are holistically unhealthy. We know that. We know that we are holistically unhealthy.
There's a couple of things that we joked about on this conversation. We talked about fasting. We talked about you know, unplugging. We talked about caring for one another. We talked about hand washing. You understand? Like all common things. That's not so common.
Well, I don't know. Like these are things that you're supposed to do. These are things that you do. These are things that you do as a community. You're supposed to have empathy for each other. You're supposed to be clean. You know, people laugh at me because I say I like my house to smell like old people. I wipe and wash down everything with ammonia because I grew up in a household with a mother that was old, and that's what we did. Every Saturday morning, you clean the house before you go out. People laugh at me because I wipe down my light switches and I wipe down my doorknobs because I don't like fingerprints.
Right. So
I have nothing to do with
yours was more cosmetic with the fingerprints, but it also helped with the spread of the viruses. Like if you disinfect your areas. So that's not a common thing. Most people don't do that once a week. Or if they do, they're paying somebody else to do it. So now that somebody else can't come out because their child is not in school, so they have to stay at home with their child. And now you have a decision to make. You have a decision to clean your own damn house.
I hear a lot of frustration in your voice. I understand.
But the thing is, that's also doesn't help the person that can't go to work because their child is at home. So we know that is a cycle of
Yeah, but what do you do? What do you do when you cannot work or in my situation? When I say my situation, in regards to my country, when you can go to work, but ain't nobody to go to work with. There's nobody to serve. We live in a community that 90% of our income comes from service.
You're going to be able to know how to service each other. You're going to know how to evolve, which we do all the time. You're going to know how to adapt. And then you're going to... Yeah.
So the next step is adapting and evolving.
Now, let's say this. You guys are, quote unquote, quarantined or you're disconnected from outside. That happened to you guys before. Y'all wasn't always like the top biggest tourism place to the US. And I'm not talking about like being slaves or being colonized or anything like that. because that's a major part of it too. But if you now have certain people or certain things that are not happening, you just have yourself. And what are you going to do?
This is going to be an interesting time. You know, we've run out of time, but this is definitely going to be an interesting time. Over the next few weeks, we are definitely going to sound off continuously and talk about COVID-19 and how it is affecting various economies, communities, and so forth. Additionally, we'll talk about the health epidemic and pandemic. The health pandemic and how governments and or health organizations are responding to the outbreak. We'll talk about the outbreak itself, if it has increased or decreased as a result of the quarantines and the reduction of travel around the world. Once again,
hey, this is your girl.
My name is Africa Allah, and this is Sound Off. Thank you for joining and listening. We appreciate you, and
Peace.
May God be with you, or whomever you praise to worship. Have hope. Let hope be your guide.